Well, good morning, my friends. Your old pal Jordan the Lion, and you probably remember yesterday we were hanging out at the Buster Keaton Museum, checking out Buster Keaton's birth home, and I said we were going to go do some more vlogging after that, so we are on our way 2 hours back the direction we came, and we are going to tour an underground salt mine today. Who's in? Let's do it. Daze with Jordan the Lion begins now. Looks like we have encountered some rain. Well, this is a first for me, an underground salt museum. I have been to a silver mine in Mexico last year, but I've never been to a salt mine. We're standing 650 feet above one of the 8 wonders of Kansas. So here on display, they've got what they call the old number 2, and it says the old number 2 was built in 1919 and there were only 3 like it, and it was basically decommissioned and then brought here to Hutchinson to be sold for scrap metal, and they never ended up tearing it apart, and then they repurposed it and put it here on the grounds here for display. So this should be pretty cool because the tour actually goes on a train underground, so let's take a train ride. Now this says right here that in 1887 salt was discovered in Reno County here, and that started up what began the development of the salt mine industry. So this is a full-on experience with just the normal admission, which is $19 a person. You get a museum access, you get the tour underground, which is part train ride, and then they also have a dark ride, and then you can pay extra for something called the safari. We're not going to do that today because just the normal tour alone is 2 hours, but they leave every 20 minutes, so we'll be taking off here shortly. Grab our safety helmet here. Here's our ride down. $650 feet down in 90 seconds. Hello. Now, of course, they remind you, you know, this is not like table salt. It's not refined, so don't go licking the walls or anything. You know darn well they wouldn't tell you that if they didn't have a problem with it in the past, so. This part of the wall has a few arrows pointing out the different layers here. And here you can see the crystal pod that's formed. And then the one above is showing that there's pipe there. And then the mud layer. So above us is the aqueous bed aquifers. So to preserve the salt, they ask you not to touch the walls, but they have a big chunk of it right here so you can touch it, which is kind of cool. That's a great part of the experience. Wow, it feels like marble. It's extremely smooth and shiny. Like extremely smooth. Wow. Oh, and this shows the marker beds, the lines where they could keep everything level as they were building it. So here you can see the marker bed from the 20s and 30s. And then as you go above, if you count them all, it takes you to the 1940s and 50s up there. That's an interesting donation box. Kaboom. So the salt mine we're in now was developed during the Permian period they've discovered, and it says that that would have been between 299 and 251 million years ago. And this is what they believe the world would have looked like at that time. So this section over here shows the aqua life, because for the foundation of that period, it was all underground, it was all seawater, so eventually it all kind of evaporated and went away. Now we're going to check out part of the museum, these old salt carts. The Carey Salt Company. So this is showing the equipment repair bays that they would have had down here, because since they had electrical things going on down here, they had to have welders and people that could fix anything that would go wrong so that the miners could continue working. So this was one of their vehicles they could use to get around the mines and some of their workspace. Now that would be an interesting machine to operate for a living. Like a gigantic writing chainsaw, it looks like. So this video here is kind of showing that they would poke holes in the salt walls over here, and then they would put dynamite in there and they would blow that to break up the salt. So there's a guy making a initial hole over there, drilling the hole and then getting ready to blow it up. Is that Mike Rowe, the Dirty Jobs guy? Sure is. So as you might have guessed, the reason they have this here is because he worked here. In 2006, he made a special appearance right here in this mine to film an episode and to see what it was like being a salt miner. Here's a case full of all the trash that the miners would leave behind. They said they found that it was just more effective or cost effective for them just to leave it behind. So these are all things that they found in the rubble. Old like cigarette cartons and food wrappers and Fritos. And look, there are a couple of those boot holes we saw them making with the blasting caps. He said they ended up calling those boot holes. That is so crazy to think that we are 650 feet below ground right now. It looks like this conveyor belt's job was to crush those. Break it down along the way down. Wow, that thing is huge. What? It says please touch. Ooh. So this is what you had to wear for precautions if you're working in the labs, because they said the samples for where they were drilling could contaminate you. So these were called clean room suits. Here they say these two patches are crystallized salt, which means that seawater leaked into there, and then when it evaporated it left these two patches right here. And kids photo ops. Believe it or not, they have a movie memorabilia section of the museum, so let's go check that out right now. Underground vaults and storage. We are now entering the movie memorabilia. Right away we have some Men in Black and items from Men in Black 2. There's one of the pistols. And then Tommy Lee Jones sunglasses. And then a couple of the alien work visas. Now this is a miniature that they used in Superman Returns from 2006 for the Daily Planet building, one of the models. That suit right there that almost looks like something Evel Knievel would wear was Cameron Diaz's suit from Charlie's Angels. It says Natalie Cook's racing suit. She wore it while driving in the 2000 movie. Cool costume. I did not see that movie, so I can't give you any comments on the movie, which I'm sure you'll be glad to hear. Kind of a weird collection, but I mean it's cool, it's just odd. Here's some stuff from Will Smith's Ali. Sonny Liston's boxing gloves, worn by Michael Bennett playing Sonny Liston. And there's a pass from the fight in the movie, Ali and Foreman. And then a press kit from the fight in the movie where Will Smith is portraying Muhammad Ali. So these are all props from the movie. I just say it's kind of a weird collection because it doesn't really have that much to do with salt mines. So this was kind of a pleasant surprise. I didn't expect to see James Dean's shirt from Giant in here, but they have one of his shirts as him being Jet Rink in his last movie. Check that out. Okay, now I kind of get why they have the movie memorabilia section. When the warehouses in Hollywood were getting too hot and they were afraid that they were going to lose the original films, they started sending them down here to the salt mines to be climate controlled. Here's some chocolate bars from Willy Wonka. Then some animations. Bugs Bunny. Gotta keep him safe. And check this out, they have the pod. They have Dorothy too. Of course, they made 4 Dorothys if you know the movie Twister. And there's Dorothy. That's so cool to see. I love that movie. I love it. That is so cool. I did not expect to see that either. If you know the movie, that's what they're hoping to use to capture data for Twisters to make early warning systems. So they shoot up all these sensors out of there. And of course they name it Dorothy because Wizard of Oz, you know. So here they show some of the movies that they store down here, and I'm seeing Aliens, I see The Sandlot, I see Strange Days, This Is My Life, Toys, That Thing You Do, Volcano, yeah, Rookie of the Year, Romeo and Juliet. Here we have a mannequin from Matrix. Agent Smith. That is Dean Cain's Superman costume from Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman. That was big when I was a kid. Then over here we have James Granger's costume from Monument Men. Matt Damon. Yep. I never saw Monuments Men. But that's Matt Damon's costume. Here's Mrs. Ricky Bobby's outfit, if you like Talladega Nights. That is a pretty funny movie. I'm not a huge Will Ferrell fan, but that's a funny movie. Shake and bake, baby, shake and bake. And this is Sacha Baron Cohen's outfit from Talladega Nights. He plays the pompous Jean Girard. Here's Schwarzenegger's costume as Mr. Freeze from Batman and Robin. That's really cool to see. And then George Clooney's costume from Batman and Robin. Pretty cool. Really cool collection here. Now it's time to take our train ride. So we're going to take the Salt Mine Express.
In the wall to your right is a bulkhead. A bulkhead is what the miners call a wall that was used to direct airflow. This bulkhead is made of 1.5-inch thick tongue and groove planks supported by 6-inch by 6-inch timbers and sealed with black tar paper on the backside to keep air from that part of the mine from coming into this side. It was slowly being crushed by the roof, but as you can see, it finally came down. As you look to your left, you'll see a rare sight, what the miners call a roof fall. The pieces on the floor used to be the roof, but over a number of years, the salt started sagging away from the compacted mud layer above it and eventually fell. Now, even though only a few rooms ever develop a roof sag, everywhere in the mine that people will walk, drive, or ride, we monitor the roof, and sags are removed when necessary. From 1923 to 1983, the miners used a rail system to transport salt from the mine face to the salt skip, where it was hoisted topside. Then, in 1983, they switched to a conveyor belt system. On the left is a car that was used to haul salt, and railroad tracks that were abandoned when mining left this area in the 1950s. Our train crew ripped up and hauled back abandoned rails and ties from the mine that were used for our train track. Almost 5,000 feet of rail for the track you're riding on. Everything that comes down in the mine stays in the mine. And if you look at the lit area, you'll see that this is even true of mining trash. Now, we know this area was mined in the 1940s and used as a break area in the 1950s. And we found many name brand products in this trash pile from that time period, and some of which are still around today. There are a couple of things that we noticed here. One, there's a calendar from 1953 on the floor by the rocks on the left. And two, when we found it over by the pillar, the great trash can, well, it was empty. We consider all these items to be artifacts, which only proves one person's trash is another's treasure. In case you were wondering, trash isn't the only thing miners left underground. And apparently this area was used as a restroom. Oh, no fancy porta pots here. And they weren't very careful with the toilet paper either.
That was really fun. All right, next we're doing the dark ride.
It was the only way to get the salt onto the skip and out of the mine until 1983 when they converted to the conveyor belt, which they still use today. If you look to your left, you'll see an electric locomotive. They nicknamed this locomotive the Galloping Goose. You'll see the arm that's extended to the ceiling to its power source. That's one reason, because it looked like the neck of a goose. And then also the springs were tied too tight on the locomotive, so when they started the engine, it would jump up and down on the tracks, and so that's why they gave it the Galloping Goose. And then in 1960s, the miners switched to ANFO, or ammonium nitrate, and that is just a basic diesel fuel and fertilizer. It was cheaper, safer, and more effective. This mining method is called the pillar and room method. These pillars are 40 feet by 40, and rooms are 50 by 50 feet. See what is called a rib wall. And a rib wall is resulting from blasting, and each rib is distance of between 8 to 10 feet, which is the length of the undercutter, which you learned in the video when you got into the gallery. So they blast every day at the end of the day, and so that wall probably took about a little over 2 weeks. If you look above us, this is created not by blasting, it's created by a machine that Strataca and underground vaults and storage use, called the continuous miner. And what the continuous miner does is chips away at the salt to prevent any piece bigger from a dime to fall. Permian Sea lies where we are today, and just like any other body of water, experienced dry seasons and wet seasons. During wet seasons, the mud would come to the seafloor, and that would create the dark layer that you see in the salt bed. Pigs, and what? Light is the very first one. So very good on the flight one. Back in the 20s and 30s, the carbide is what they used. And a carbide is a hard hat with an open flame and a reflector. So imagine a candle with a mirror behind it. That was the only source of light down here, or an open flame lantern. And once we get the air down into the mine, we don't want it to go anywhere that we're not. And so the miners built what is called a gob wall. Does anyone recognize, if you look to your left, does anyone recognize what this gob wall is made out of? Boxes, anyone recognize what kind of boxes?
Dynamite!
The dynamite boxes, yeah. So they figured out that if you stacked these boxes up, they would make a nice seal so that no air would seep through. So they would stuff these boxes with the salt rock, and so each box would weigh up to 80 pounds. And they would stack them 3 deep. And so it would withstand the force from the dynamite blasting. Well, if you look straight above us as we go over the hill, you'll see a big slab of it right above us. And what causes the salt to turn red is a higher level of potassium. And potassium has a natural bitter taste to it. We do not know how big this crystal pot is. It could be 100 feet tall, it could be 20 feet wide, but we need the pillar to sustain the stability of the mine. So something that happens naturally in salt mines is to your right, and that is called a floor heave. Things get preserved down here. Combustion engine to an electric motor had a 300-foot long cord, and some of the miners found out that if you gained enough momentum that you could actually coast. And so they had a competition to see who could coast the furthest, and the winner was 150 feet. The loser had to push it back. And he came to Kansas and founded the beautiful city of South Hutchinson.
So here they let you get a little bag and get yourself some salt from the piles over here. So I'm taking this big chunk right here. And I kind of want a darker piece too. So I also grabbed these pieces as well.
Also, the attention of the museum was confined to.
All right, my friends. Well, we are going to call it a day. I wanted to thank Jeff Wilson and Renee Poulin for becoming my newest Patreons. And we are going to call it a day here from Strataca, the Kansas Underground Salt Museum. I hope you guys enjoyed this today. Come back and see me tomorrow. I gave you a little hint in this video what we're going to be doing. Have a great night, everyone, and goodbye.